You've been thinking about hardiness all wrong. Young plant genius Callum Philpott is here to tell you why you should challenge the RHS advice and come to your own conclusions about which plants you can use in your own garden.
The thing about plant hardiness is it's not an exact science because there's so many factors that come into play. If a plant's going to survive the winter or not, there's so much at stake that, a plant could die at, say, -2 or 3. And then another plant of the same species could survive that. And it's all to do with provenance of where they were originally collected from. So plants that maybe were collected at a high altitude or maybe a slightly more northerly location in its range could have more hardiness than one that was collected at lower altitudes or at a lower, or vice versa, I suppose, of the southern hemisphere or closer to the equator, I suppose you could say.
This is something that Tom Hart-Dyke talks about as well when he was plant hunting for seeds from eucalypts in Tasmania.
And collecting plants from the coldest regions in Tasmania, as high altitude as possible, cold valley systems where the cold air sinks into these valleys. So going to an area where it's very cold, therefore it's a fair bet the seed that you collect, the offspring, will be hardier than if you collected them from near the coast or somewhere else in Australia. And that's been proven pretty accurate.
And also there's a lot of things to do with, again, like age of the plant as well. So a younger plant, sapling, or a smaller plant won't have as much cold tolerance necessarily as a more larger, more mature specimen. Like the summer as well has got a lot to play if it's going to go through the winter, because if you have a nice warm summer, it can ripen the wood. And then with that ripe wood, that if the plant's then cut back over the winter, it can then regenerate from that firmer wood. I get that a lot with plumbago, because it's hardy-ish where I am. It sort of gets through, but it won't flower well the next year unless we have a hot summer the year before to ripen the wood, so it doesn't get cut back by the frost so much. So it needs to have a good woody structure to then be big enough and vigorous enough to flower the following year. Because our British summers just aren't really hot enough for it, and our winters are a bit too cold for it, which is probably a good thing, because I saw it growing in Spain all down the side of like a train track, like buddleia does grow here. So it's like, I'm kind of happy it's not weedy because it's quite a good plant. I mean, location as well, location of where you plant a plant, it's all to do with, I mean, is it maybe under a tree or close to a building where it's got that slight difference between being in a frosty zone or a frost-free zone? And also wetness as well. I mean, is the soil wet? Is it waterlogged? Or is the soil quite free draining? Because if a plant's wet, what happens a lot is it's very sort of engorged with water, and then that water can then freeze at the colder temperatures and cause it to like burst, like the stems can burst open. And obviously cause like cell damage to the plant. But if it's slightly on the drier side, when it gets the cold, there's not as much water in the stems and the leaves, so there's less chance that it's going to freeze like that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
There's a lot of like different factors at play when it comes to plant hardiness. So it's not just because maybe you've grown something before and lost it, it doesn't necessarily mean it's definitely not hardy for you. Try again. Keep trying. Just keep on trying. I'd say try things 3 times. I'd say three times is my rule. If something dies for me after 3 times, it's not for my garden and I won't grow it. I almost gave up with Farfugium. I've had 2 plants before of like the yellow spotted one, and it's quite an expensive plant. It's not cheap to come by. So this was my last chance with it. I bought one back in the spring this year, and I thought, it's not before, like slugs and snails had eaten it, or it's just proven too dry in my garden. It just didn't really like it. It just fizzled away. But do you know what? It's done really, really well. And also picked up the giant leaf form of it as well, and that's done really well. The only one that hasn't is the one with the sort of crispy leaf, but it's just hanging on. So I'm hoping maybe after the winter we get a nice bit of winter wet on it. It might establish itself a little bit better. Maybe. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that does look particularly good on your Instagram grid.
Yeah, they're great plants. I've loved them for years, but I've just, I've not had much luck. And then all of a sudden, just tried them again. Just thought, you get one more shot. and it's paid off all right.
It goes to show as well that, like, when you look at something up on the RHS database, of course, it's just given obviously like a single set of data, but like you said, there's so many variables about not just location as to where someone is in the UK or globally, but like you say, like, you know, how warm or cold was it during the summer, those kind of things that don't feed into those kind of don't feed into that RHS website.
Exactly, and I think that's where the RHS. I'm not trying to diss the RHS at all or anything, but I suppose a lot of the trials they do. I know they do trials in various gardens all around the country to try and get a big picture. But Wisley does get cold, as you mentioned. We got like -12 the other winter, so the RHS will often say things like, "That's not hardy." If I go on the RHS website and look up some of the plants that I grow outside, perfectly fine, it will say that should not be growing here. That should not be growing in the UK or anything. But yeah, I think it's all down to, like I said, so many different factors. A lot of the time as well, microclimate is really important. And yeah, I just think people need to do more trials with stuff, you know. I'm always just trying new stuff, like houseplants. Just go to a houseplant section, see what's like reduced or, you know, about to be thrown away, and just stick it outside and see what happens. I've done that. I've done that with the avocado, which I grew from a stone, and just thought, well, you know, try that. It survived. A clivia that was like looking half dead, just stuck it in the ground, and yeah, I don't think it's going to flower, but it survived. I mean, you know, that's that's interesting enough. Just stuff like that, you know. If you think, well, and also, if you've got plants that aren't that hardy, and you think, well, these are a bit, maybe it might have a bit of a chance that it could be hardy. Maybe it grows well right down in Cornwall, or maybe there's some specimens of it in central London. I'm not saying go and get coconut palms and stuff like that and stick them outside, because they will die. I mean, you know, that's just being silly. But, you know, plants, you might think, you know, there might actually be a chance that it could survive here. And if you've got it, and if you've got a plant of it, maybe it's outgrown your conservatory or outgrown your greenhouse, take cuttings of it, so you've got backup plants, and then stick it outside and just see what happens. If you can't look after it anymore because it's outgrown your space or something, or even if it's fine and you are being able to overwinter it, take some cuttings anyway, grow them on, and then once the cuttings are big enough to plant out, maybe try them out. Just trial, just experiment, you know, because the climate is changing. You know, our winters are getting milder. Our summers are on average getting warmer. So it's time to start trying different stuff and experimenting.
Yeah.
That's what exotic gardening is, really. It is just experimenting.
He's spoken like Will Giles himself. But that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. Nice one.
Thanks.
All right. Well, cheers then, Callum. I really appreciate that you've come back in to speak over some of the questions again, and actually also to add some more bits, because obviously we did have that massive microphone failure.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy that you've come back. So thanks for that.
That's all right. Anytime.
Cheers then. Stay in touch.
Yeah, we'll do. I'll see you later.
All right. Cheers, Callum. Bye-bye.
Bye.